Hello and welcome to a video which is Neoliberalism 101. Now, I have made a video about paleoconservatism in the past, but now the next topic is to be covering neoliberalism. What is neoliberalism? Well, in the United States, it has been seen to be defined in particular as a sort of resurgent economic liberalist ideology that promotes free market capitalism as the massive sort of economic proprietor, whereas with the paradigm shift now, it is more of a Keynesian sort of infusion. So whilst people like dictators such as Augusto Pinochet in Chile will be neoliberals, not to be confused with Joe Biden neoliberals, Hillary Clinton neoliberals, or how I mentioned in my presidential review earlier, Bill Clinton. Now, a lot of politicians are neoliberals. In fact, most of them vaguely are. But let's go into the main topic of today. Neoliberalism, at least in the American-centric definition, is necessarily speaking a sort of welfare state attached with a capitalistic state with regulations. Now, does that sound like paleoconservatism? Yes, but let's talk about it. The democratic establishment today encompasses a lot of things. Some of that is democratic socialism, social democracy, neoliberalism, and other things. But the main understanding is supply side inherently. Bill Clinton believed in supply side economics. Barack Obama did as well. So let's talk about this. When you go onto Reddit, when you go onto any website, you see that there's a low investment into Joe Biden, but his policies is what governs the nation largely, if you see it or not. So if you were to look up neoliberalism explained, it is very convoluted at its essence, but it is not to be confused with republicanism or even capitalism in its more pure sense. Neoliberalism could be pointed out to be woke capitalism, or it could be, it is free market, yes, but there are more restrictions on it than what the GOP wants. It is not Tea Party libertarian capitalism, nor is it far leftism. It is somewhere between. It is kind of idealistic but practical at the same time. It is moderately left but is technically on the medium right. So what is this thing? It is an enigma in terms of economic systems. But I'm going to talk about neoliberalism today in a sense that is more metaphysical and more so appropriate for the general public. Now let's talk about this. Neoliberalism in practice is essentially, let's look at the Obama administration economics, okay? So if you were to look up Obama economics on the internet, it would show that he was for a lot of things like the expansion of the government, for example, but he was also open into cutting taxes. Why? Well, in neoliberalism, if you cut taxes, you essentially make things more open in the free market, or increasing the amount of money a person has, which increases buying and should help with consumer confidence, no? So that's what he did. And also, let's look at what else encompasses neoliberalism. It includes Keynesism. So Alfred Maynard Keynes, who is some British man from 100 years ago, thought that if you were to use a lot of spending during a recession and then use austerity in a boom time, then that's how you could provide a government that is consistently good in terms of economy. What do I mean? Well, in a recession, you're losing jobs and you are losing money, revenue. So what do? Do you increase taxes? Not necessarily, but what you do is print money. Money printer go brrr, and so when you do that, you create inflation. But to understand inflation, what you need to understand is that you're seizing the means of production and taking a little bit out of everything and then giving a lot to a little. So what that means is, sure, the dollar could lose, let's say, 2% of its value with a $900 billion Obama stimulus, but that $900 billion would go a long way into changing the economy, so it's disproportionately an effective tool. Okay? Understand that. That Great Recession that started in 2007, 8, or 9 took about 6 to 7, 8, 9 years to really get us out of it under Obama, but let's understand what he did. So he did a payroll tax holiday. What does that mean? He meant that he cut the payroll tax approximately 2%. So that cut revenues for all sorts of programs like Social Security, which you'd think, well, what the hell is that? He's a Democrat. Why would he cut the Social Security net? Well, no, he didn't. But what he did was that he bet against the future and cut the revenues today so that they could be higher tomorrow under a booming economy, hypothetically speaking. Now, neoliberalism in theory could have principles, but under the Democratic Party, in which that is in effect the establishment's choice of economic policy, it is not so principled. For example, you could have a public option with health insurance, but that is not to be equated to a free market. Of course not. You could have a government under a Democrat which spends about 19% as a share of GDP. Under Bill Clinton, for example, 19 to 21%. Or you could have somebody like, let's say, Joe Biden that spends 22 to 25%. But this is vaguely the same area we're talking about. So when you see a Democrat propose a new tax and spend policy, just know that he's vaguely going to change things slightly, but in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to be very noticeable. Like Obamacare largely went to the businesses. It was an insurance corporate sellout move, really. So let's look at this. There's federal budget debates under President Obama, and what did President Obama do? He extended the Bush tax cuts that were supposed to expire in 2010 to then expire, I believe, or was it 2011 or 12? But they were supposed to expire within 10 years of Bush signing that in 2001 or 2. Okay? So he had the choice of letting that go and then having the marginal income tax rates and other things, for example, go up on the middle class, the poor, the rich. So what he did was that he renewed it, but he took away he repealed the tax cuts on the rich. Okay? So notice what he did. He believes that lower tax rates on the middle class helps, whereas on the upper rates, he, for a moral reason, does not back that. Now, what we see with Obama during the Great Bargain with a lot of these rhino Republicans at the time is that he was willing to, for gay marriage, privatize Social Security. Privatizing Social Security is pretty crazy. Even to a paleoconservative, privatizing Social Security is too far right. That is way too libertarian. You saw what just happened today, what happened these last couple of months in 2020, and you see that the stock market took a 30% hit. Would you want to take a 30% hit in your money in terms of Social Security? Of course not. So it seems kind of volatile. It is not a populist idea, honestly, and it is a, maybe a corporate sellout, whatever you want to call it. But it did ostensibly push the narrative that Obama was willing to compromise with the right wing, the more libertarian politicians, so that he could get a social issue. Now, this is very important. With the neoliberalism, and especially with the Democrats as a whole, they are more focused on social pet issues and wedge issues upon those. Therefore, they negate to look into the deep intricate parts of economics. For example, when you look at Joe Biden's platform, what is Joe Biden's proposed platform in 2020? You think about it real quick, and it's not very innovative. Sure, he says 1.7 trillion of let's say, green energy. That's not going to expand the government more than 2% a year. So it's not going to be a really big thing. But what is Joe Biden for? The death penalty, to abolish that? See, that doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but he's going to put that as a main plank. Okay? Very important to look at what the people support. So Obama type liberals, for example, would like to have a Joe Biden type of surrogate presidency. And why? It's because he doesn't really change anything. It is a return to normalcy. Well, what is normalcy? It is neoliberalism. That is the base of America right now, and it has been for 40 years. Understand that? Now on to the next point. What are some common positions of a neoliberal? Well, they want transvestite rights, transgender rights, they want gay rights, they want all sorts of things. I forgot to mention, Obama was doing the privatization of Social Security in the Great Bargain in exchange for legalizing same-sex marriage. So, for the sake of not even 5% of the country having the right to arbitrarily get married under the eyes of the government, he was willing to put tens of millions of seniors, and especially more so in the future, at the hands of a volatile stock market. See, that's neoliberalism in a nutshell. Put the majority at risk for the sake of minorities. What minorities? Well, you can't hear the end of LGBTQIA plus whatever month or anything like that. Or Elizabeth Warren, who is supposed to be a progressive, says, well, I need a transgender 7-year-old kid to tell me who to appoint to the Department of Education. God help me. Who cares about the opinion of so ridiculous? Or also, let's add in the fact, who in their right mind is going to prioritize the pet issue of a transvestite who's mentally ill over the economy of a couple 100 million people? Or what about this? Illegal immigrants. They're going to put illegal immigrants as a higher campaign issue than a workers' bill of rights, or unionized negotiations with the government, because they don't really care about the worker. Under neoliberalism, you don't really think about that. But what does Joe Biden want? The $15 federal minimum wage. Well, what is that? Now it is $7.25. That is over double of what it is now. And Hillary Clinton, for example, didn't want to boost the minimum wage, really. And when Sanders wanted $15 4 years ago, that was amazing. That was a huge thing. Wow, you're crazy. You're a socialist, Bernie. So what does Hillary do? She was already at what, like $7.25 federally? She did not have a strong position on that before. Then she said $12. 12. What? Where'd you get that number from? Nowhere. You just picked the middle of whatever the stream was going, and she was a neoliberal candidate to begin with. Now let's look at Joe Biden. What is the popular number now for the minimum wage 4 years later? Well, $12 plus 4 years of inflation is like 12 and 12 cents an hour, right? Or I don't know. Oh, let's say 15. Well, where do you get that from? The socialist. Oh, wow. See? So this neoliberal message under Biden and Clinton clearly did not have a coherent ideology or a principle to it, meaning that it cannot be the exact perfect number because they just picked it arbitrarily. It could be the right number, could be 16, it could be 14, but that's not as aesthetic as 15, right? If every Democrat wanted a $20 minimum wage, Joe Biden would be stumping for it right now. Why? Because he doesn't actually care. Okay? Now he indicates support for paid family and sick leave. We have been a country for hundreds of years. Every other country has this, basically, and yet we don't have it. Why? Did Bill Clinton push for it? And apparently not. Did Obama push for this? No. Trump has done more in that case, and on that front, for the federal workers, than had Obama, who is the liberal, so-called socialist under Newt Gingrich, for example. How is this making sense logically? Understand, people. They care about social issues more than the economy. They want status quo with the economy, and they want more degeneracy and more normalization of mental illness, aka queer things, over what is in the common interest of the worker. Keep in mind, why did Trump win electorally? Well, it was because of the Midwest giving him the votes. Why did people lose the votes? It was because they went and said, I want to give a $15 minimum wage, but I'm not going to give you back that $30 an hour manufacturing job in Flint, Michigan. So when you have a bunch of Negroes and you have the African community of Flint, which was an upper middle class area, depending on who you ask, be decimated to be a really crappy town without good sanitation, and you ask who did it, it was under Democrats largely, or sellout Republicans. So they voted for Trump. Tell me how Mitt Romney got less of the vote than racist Trump. It's because Trump had an economic message which was more palatable to blacks and the working class. So understand. So talking about African Americans, what did Joe Biden say about reparations? Now, slavery is a big issue with blacks. So are reparations. What are reparations? Reparations are giving back money in terms of like paying back something that was done bad. So reparations. So in this context, slavery was a bad thing, right? So white people owned slaves. Fine. So white people need to pay reparations. Now, Bernie Sanders or somebody of that caliber would say, okay, we're going to give them $500 billion. I'm not going to go into the point that that's really stupid, but Joe Biden, what does he say? Reparations, study it. Are you kidding me? What does that even mean? Study reparations? Are you going to do anything? Of course he wouldn't commit to giving anybody anything that is of value because he doesn't care. He's saying, I'll study reparations. I care about you blacks. Where's the money at, Joe? You know, a lot of blacks got their Trump bucks. See, that's something. $1,200 a month or in a check is a big deal for a lot of people in ghettos, a lot of poor people, a lot of middle class people even. And yet, what did Biden give you? What did Obama give you, really? Okay? Very interesting. What about college? The fundamental issue. Like even theoretically speaking, you should be able to find a solution with college. So what is the problem with college? Neoliberals would say, well, we're not giving it enough money. Well, maybe giving it money in the first place is the problem, no? To say, well, if the government's going to give me this much money, I'll just raise my tuitions as a university president. Duh. Oh, but now Joe Biden says, well, we're going to chip in 2 years to be free? Well, Joe, with what money, number one? And number two, that doesn't solve the issue fundamentally speaking. You're just making some negligible change in the grand scheme of things, right? Okay, now Joe Biden on, and look guys, I'm talking about Joe because he is the main principal candidate for neoliberalism. He is the horse that they are backing now. Student debt. Expand or fix existing debt relief programs. What does that even mean? No big issue. Bernie's an idiot, but he said, I'll pay off the debt. Okay, well, that's something. Boost teacher pay by how much, right? So I'm going down a list, and a lot of this is generic. Why? Because there's no principles under this, and surely Trump doesn't have the exact economic principle, nor has he studied economics really. Like a lot of other people have, but he has more of an idea, and in terms of governance has done more economically than Biden could ever dream of in his demented state now. In terms of guns, if you're an actual liberal, you would say, let's get rid of guns. A neoliberal says, we'll find a middling solution. So far, there are still school shootings, right? There are still a lot of gun accidents. Fine. So then ban the guns, right? Why are you doing a background check? Is that really the way to go? What about abortion? In principle, you should be able to get abortions, right? Now, you could be pro-life, but if you're going to be pro-life with no exceptions. If you're going to be pro-choice, be pro-choice and no exceptions. Why would he put some limits on it? The ACA, the Obamacare bill, okay? He's going to build on it. What does that even mean? Are you going to provide insurance to everybody? No, he's just going to cover more people at the expense of everybody else in terms of taxes. Well, isn't that unique? No, it isn't. Of course not. Now let's talk about immigration in the neoliberal perspective. We have DACA, which is citizenship for dreamers. Well, what does that mean? Is that a principled take? No. You are taking people that are under the age of 35 that are illegal immigrants, who were mainly brought by their parents, and you're going to give them amnesty. Out of what? Is there a rule under that? Is there a specific law that would give you precedent for that? I don't think so, right? He hasn't brought it up at least, and yet he's going to give amnesty. Well, why not give amnesty to all the illegals? Exactly. There's no principle. Yet again, it is middling. It is a half step towards a solution which may not even be right. So that's neoliberalism again. And neoliberalism, I mean in practice, okay? Not theoretically. Don't get mad at me. Some people say, no, okay? Illegal entry into the country. Leave the rules as they are. Well, won't you look at that? He wants to keep the things vaguely in place. You see, he wants to give amnesty to maybe less than half of the illegal immigrants and keep all the other ones undocumented for the meantime, and then not tear down the wall, just keep things the way they were under Obama, basically. Like I said, return to normalcy. The United States, fundamentally speaking, is a neoliberal country in its practice and how it's run. Notice. Now let's look at transportation. So he wants to pay for infrastructure through changing taxes on corporations and the wealthy. What does that even mean? Completely vague. Transportation spending did not really increase as much as you'd like it to under Obama, for example. What he did do is invest a lot of money in Solyndra and expand solar panel tax credits, something stupid like that. Completely useless. Legalizing marijuana is another decision that Biden and neoliberals are too weak to really fix. Let the states decide. See, that's the most milquetoast John McCain position he could have taken. Talk about being mildly right-wing neoliberals. Let the states decide. Okay. So basically what has been happening this entire time. Defense spending. He wants to boost the defense budget. Who in their right mind on the left would increase the defense spending? That's basically the GOP handbook. That's a non-starter if you're on the Republican side. So he wants to increase military spending, not even freeze it. What's the principle behind that? Keep troops deployed in the Middle East. What does that mean? Okay, so we're going to leave thousands of men with the possibility of dying, for example, on the pretense of what exactly? And under what principle are you directing this? Or are you just trying to leave the troops that are there because they were already there for a reason, and you just want to return to normalcy? So what leadership quality are we seeing in this ideology? There is no leadership that is progressing the society in any meaningful sense. Okay, capital gains. Increase the capital gains tax rate. See, that's an actual good idea. That is a progressive idea. That is a per se adequate, normal idea for Democrats. Finally, he has something direct. Okay? Now, corporate income taxes. He wants to raise the tax, but keep them lower than what Trump set him down to. So we are down to 21% when Obama had him at 35% before Trump cut those taxes on the businesses. So Biden wants it lower than Obama. So yet another thing that Obama could never fix, and Biden did not have the clout or the wherewithal to cut them. So he's being incompetent there. Wealth taxes. Increase existing taxes on upper income Americans. So that's a milquetoast neoliberal position. Write that down, guys. Raise taxes on the rich no matter what. Even if Trump didn't cut the taxes on the rich, he still wants them higher. So what about China? What about foreign policy? What do neoliberals think of China? Don't worry so much about China. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me, guys? China has been increasingly getting stronger and stronger and catching up to America disproportionately higher in GDP growth. For example, a good metric to understand is that they've been averaging about 10% growth a year, it would seem, for the last 25 years up until Trump. So they would have already caught up to us. Give it 5 years and they would have already been here if Obama were a 4-term president. Thank God he wasn't, because under neoliberalism, they would be okay with that. What about NAFTA and the USMCA? He supports the revised USMCA. What is the USMCA? It is NAFTA, but substantially better in terms of having more labor requirements, improving the standards of things, having things more oriented towards America. So it is, I'd say, marginally better. It's an improvement, but fundamentally it is wrong. Biden thinks free trade is okay, even if we're getting exploited. Why? Well, maybe he doesn't think that. Look, a neoliberal doesn't think we should be exploited in trade, but don't use tariffs to pressure countries because that's a regressive tax. Well, let me tell you something. How do you fix a trade issue without a tariff or doing something that is massive and noteworthy? So, toothless on trade. Bill Clinton, toothless on trade. George Bush, toothless on trade. Barack Obama, toothless on trade. What was the last Look at the trade deficits. They were going down under Obama, but that was a general trend. But look at the expedited process of that said trade imbalance correction under President Trump. And you would see that those tariffs work to some extent. And then when you look at the revenue given, $80 billion in about a year of Trump doing that 35% tariff, I believe, or 31% tariff on China, then you would understand that he's easily making back the money that the farmers are losing. So it seems like a win-win, honestly, when you're using mild tariffs. Now, he believes in joining the TPP 2.0 program. What is that? He wants another expansionist free trade agreement that is not completely resolved and is not fair. But then when you ask a neoliberal about their trade, they'll say we'll have environmentalists at the table. We're going to have environmentalists. We're going to have the labor. We're going to have LGBTQ at the trade representative table. We're going to have transvestite midgets on the table. So they'll give you lip service, but they're not going to give you results, and they're not going to give you a thing that will particularly fix anything. So now that I'm done with Joe Biden's platform, and we understand that with this video, I've showed you what is the causative effects of neoliberalism, right? Or should I expand it? Okay, so let me think about this. Obama, what did he prove to do? Keynesian economics. You take money from people in terms of taxes, but no, we didn't. He deficit spended, so we lost money on the stimulus, for example. Overall, we lost money, we lost revenue, and in exchange for that, we got a stagnant economy under Obama, under Trump, cut taxes. That means that people have more money, consumer confidence goes through the roof because he's a Republican and he's a free trader, fair trader actually, and he is able to make the stock market go up really fast and have a good sized economy, growth, unemployment low. But, given the circumstances of this Chinese thing, of course that thing went to hell. But what we see is that neoliberalism on paper works, but it is not the best, and it is not in principle correct. Why is that so? So you are willing to exploit labor, you are willing to export certain even libertarian principles for what is a social issue, or to help you win elections, right? I'm not talking about Republicans because they have their own problems, but Democrats in particular seem to want to sell out blacks as soon as they can. So for example, NAFTA, you know who lost their jobs? A lot of blacks in Michigan, in Ohio. Look at Akron, look at Toledo, look at Cincinnati, look at a lot of places, really, Indiana. A lot of places that Trump went to in 2016 where he flipped Obama counties from 2008 to Trump counties. Blood red. Why? Because he was able to communicate an economic passionate speech, something that would resonate with the laborers, the union workers even. Something that Democrats cannot do. Why? Because the people that work in this paradigm are more focused on keeping their power as well as doing incremental changes to actually do something substantive. Now, you may respect Bernie because at least he wants to change things radically, which is not something that Joe Biden would do, not something that Bill Clinton would do, not something that Barack Obama would do. And yet people still vote for these guys. Maybe not as much as they would have before, but now it is still ever so present. Neoliberalism is king. It is very much king. Guys, what else can I talk about in here? This is Neoliberalism 101, okay? This is a good introduction into what is the philosophy of neoliberalism in practice of current year. It is what it produced in the last several years, what it is able to construct in terms of a dichotomy between left-wing neoliberalism and right-wing neoliberalism, as well as what people are behind it. So we have people, like I said, Joe Biden, for example, nowadays Barack Obama. So that's what I have today. Okay, so thank you guys for watching. It is in particular favor to me to tell for you to ask yourself, do you want to subscribe to this channel, okay? I do like to get comments. I like seeing people giving me feedback on how this goes because, look, people look at what I make and they come out with their own mind, okay, made. Now tell me, how is your mind made? Like and subscribe or dislike. Thank you guys for watching so much, and I will see you later.